What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Finding Hope podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Bundy. I'm so excited you guys are here. I have been really excited to film this episode. I'm so stoked on this topic, and I've been wanting to dive into it, but was waiting for a few things in my life to happen before I did. So I'm excited that now I actually get to come and talk to you guys about it. But if you are here and if you are new, we are such a community of growth, of sisterhood. We are not here to just do the surface things. We are here to be a family and walk life out together to encourage one another. If you listen to the podcast on defining hope, that's really what this whole series is about. It's being in a constant posture of expectancy for more and for goodness and for something better. So whether that is your health, whether that's a relationship, whether it's FOMO or people pleasing, we're going to be living in an expectant mindset, posture, and belief that there is hope for a better outcome and a different outcome, and that we can break free from those things. A little side note or segment, if you want to call it. This is so off topic, but I have been obsessed, you guys. If you're watching on Spotify or on YouTube, I'm wearing these like gold hoop earrings. And ever since I was a little girl, all I wanted was to get my ears pierced so I could wear hoop earrings. I was just obsessed with hoop earrings. And fun fact, I actually don't have my ears pierced. My parents wouldn't allow me to. And then when they finally did, it was just too painful. I couldn't do it. It was not it for me. And so I don't have my ears pierced. And I've always wanted to wear hoop earrings. And I found the most adorable gold hoop earrings on Amazon. And I got them for this event that I had over Christmas because I thought earrings would be perfect for it. And honestly, I've been obsessed. I literally cannot stop wearing them. And they're just clip-ons. And I'm like, wow, dreams really do come true, even in the smallest things. So for the girlies out there that also don't want to get their ears pierced for whatever reason, I'm sure there's a very few amount of us. However, if you are one, it's not the end of the world. Clip-ons actually are a thing, and they can be so cute, and no one knows that I have clip-ons. No one even knows that my ears aren't pierced unless I tell them. So, gotta get them. They're on Amazon. I can link them if you guys want me to. But anyways, I just am obsessed. They bring me so much joy, and I'm wearing them right now because, again, I'm obsessed. Can't take them off. Today, we are going to be talking about the importance of celebrating, which in our culture is so overlooked. And I want us to walk away from this episode understanding why we should celebrate, the importance of it, how celebrations today are modern day altars that were referenced in the Bible so many times, and understanding where altars came from, why they were important, and how we can still implement this same significance in the modern age. In our journey of faith, it's crucial to pause and reflect on the victories we experience. These victories serve as modern day altars, tangible reminders of God's faithfulness and provision in our lives. Today, we're going to dive into the importance of celebrating accomplishments and victories and drawing inspiration from biblical perspectives, principles, and experiences. Let's start by understanding the altar. The altar holds significant symbolism in the Bible as a place of worship, sacrifice, and encounter with God. Throughout the Old Testament, altars were constructed by patriarchs like Abraham in Genesis and Moses in Exodus as places of devotion and commemoration. Altars were often built as reminders of divine encounters or significant events where God intervened on behalf of his people. Hold on to that. That's important. Also, these altars of remembrance were constructed of just simple stone or things from the earth, and they would serve to remind future generations of God's past faithfulness in order to give them strength to continue trusting the Lord in their present trials. So basically, breaking down altars, now that we've kind of learned what all of that is, a lot of times altars were used as sacrifices in the Bible. That's what they made their sacrifices on. That's kind of what it's known for. That's what you usually think of when you hear the word altar, is a place of sacrifice. But there are a lot of times that the Israelites often set up altars not for sacrifice, but to mark and remember important events and times when they saw God's faithfulness to them. A great reminder of this is the particular example in Joshua chapter 4, after God has parted the river for the Israelites to cross it. Together, they built an altar of 12 stones, one for each tribe. Scripture says, Joshua said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. He did this so that all the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God." I wanted to just spit out a bunch of information on what an altar is so we get a good idea and understanding of why we're going to be talking so much about it. I think altars are so important because back then they would build these sort of stones and representations where God had worked in their life. And all throughout the Bible, these are just a couple examples, but God would do some miraculous thing, or he would fulfill his word that he had spoken to them, or a promise he had given them. And when it had been fulfilled, they would build this altar of praise and remembrance in celebration so that they could look back and say, hey, God did that. And their generations could look back and say, hey, God did that. And I think celebration has become such a lost art nowadays. And whether it's birthdays, whether it's accomplishments, a lot of times our generation nowadays, we want to shy away from actually celebrating. I find that so sad because I really was convicted of this with my 1-year anniversary for my podcast. I didn't even think about celebrating it. I was just in my mind like, okay, we got through 1 year. Let's move on to the next year. I have all of these things I need to check off, everything I want to prepare for. I was in full work mode, and I was in vision for the next chapter, which I'm not saying is bad. I do think you should always have vision for, where you want to lead things. But I was so involved of, okay, I don't even have a moment to pause. I just need to keep going forward. And I don't know about you guys, but this is such a constant theme in my life of I will want something, I'll work towards something, I'll be in a relationship, I'll have breakthrough with a friend, with a family member. It doesn't matter. I'll have these good things and they happen. And it's great. I'm so thankful and I'm right on to the next thing. And the amount of times God has answered my prayers, performed miracles in my life, just given me so much of his goodness. 2 or 3 weeks go by, a month goes by, and I don't even remember, and I'm on to the next of, God, I need this. God, I'm working towards this. Okay, I need to do this. And I do think an ounce of that has become our culture of just this praise in overworking yourself, and how when you're working overtime, when you're working on weekends, when you're up late studying all night for that test, when you're constantly trying to refine yourself in your relationship and you're always trying to be a better person for your partner, so focused on how to improve and how to always do better and what's coming next, that it's so easy to forget everything God has done and all of the goodness that you have and all of the work you've already done and all of the breakthrough in your relationship you've already had. And the fact that you did get a good grade on that test a month ago, even though there's a new test now in front of you. And what I've really learned about life is it really never stops. And things are always going to be moving. Things are always going to be shifting until Jesus comes. It's a constant momentum that is pushing us forward. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Where I have felt conviction is I can get so caught up in what is next and how can I do more? And now that I've checked this off, I need to check these other 5 things off. And that can really just take away from me surrendering to God in moments where I desperately need him. And what I mean by that is when I remember God's faithfulness and I look back and I see the prayers I had written down that God answered every single one. When I look back and I see the restoration in areas in my life that I desperately needed God to restore, and he did, I'm reminded of his goodness. I'm reminded of his faithfulness. I'm reminded that he is constant and he is good. Because I don't know about you, but I am a very forgetful human, and something good or bad could happen and it's out of my mind in a year. It's out of my mind in a few years. It's gone from my memory. And because I've just moved on, I've moved on from things. And yes, that can be good at times, but I think the wisdom that Israelites had in building these altars is one that we need to focus on. Because when you have a physical, tangible thing that you can look back on and say, God did that. I saw that. I know that was God. I'm able to give God glory in this moment in my life. That is something that cannot be taken away from you. Your memory can be twisted. Your memory can be tainted, but those physical representations, they cannot be taken from you. And what I mean by your memory can be twisted, all of that, is back in Genesis when the devil deceived Eve, he questioned if what God said was true. And he made Eve rethink what God had spoken to her and what God had said to her. When we don't have something physical in front of us to remind us, no, this is what it was, this is what happened, there's no changing, there's no twisting, it's in stone, just like the 10 Commandments. The Lord put those in stone. They are unchangeable. No matter how much the devil might try to come in and say, oh, no, that actually wasn't God. Like, you got through that on your own. Or maybe you thought God was with you then, but where is he now? He left you. If he could leave you now, was he even ever with you from the start? And the devil can creep into your mind and he can make you question. And I think the Israelites were really on to something when they were making these physical reminders for not only them to look back on, but for generations to look back on and say, hey, God was faithful. And no matter what, no one can take that from us. And we have this altar of remembrance of him working in our lives. I really wanted to make the 1-year anniversary a big deal. I was like, okay, I want to start having these altars in my life. And what does that look like in the modern age? And for me, that looked like a celebration. And my roommate kind of planted the idea in my head of having a celebration. And before that, it was just so not even a thought circling my mind. But once she said it, I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity I have to create memories that are going to last me a lifetime, to give God the glory in the ways that he deserves, to celebrate the fact that, oh my goodness, this was once a thought. Now it's a reality. Not only is it a reality, it's been a year and we did it and we got through it, and there's so much more in store for us. But as we're moving forward, we're going to have this celebration to hold on to as a solid ground for all of the other trials that might come our way. And so I had this celebratory picnic, and you guys, it was crazy because when I decided that I'm going to celebrate this, I'm going to give God glory for this, this is going to be something that is going to be used for his goodness and for me probably for the rest of my life to look back on, because I don't really celebrate my wins. I don't celebrate when I achieve things. And actually, this was the first time I've ever celebrated an achievement that was work related. I'll celebrate my birthdays because I love birthdays. I'm a big birthday person, and we'll get to that later because that's a whole nother topic of why I think birthdays are also important. But I never celebrate my actual accomplishments. This was the first time I've ever celebrated an accomplishment because I usually just don't feel proud. I don't feel worthy of a celebration. I don't feel like I've done enough. And these are just all lies from the enemy, because no matter what I think in my human flesh, yeah, I can't do enough. I will not do enough. But God has given me the strength to be able to carry out his vision. And so when I had decided to have the celebration, the amount of pushback I got was unreal. And I had just an immense amount of resistance. I was so back and forth of, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I shouldn't celebrate. No one's going to come. What if they think it's weird that I'm bringing all these people together for me? Like, I feel so selfish doing this. The timing wasn't working out. There was just L after L and so much resistance. Any date I picked, something would come up. Any person I tried to plan around to be there, something came up. When I wanted things to happen, things would start unfolding that made it impossible to happen. And finally, I was like, screw it. If I'm getting this much resistance, that means there's something good on the other side. And kind of like I talked about in one of my episodes, when there is resistance, you have to push through that. And so I was telling myself, Kayla, take your own advice. If you are feeling resistance, that means God has something on the other side that's so much better than you could ever imagine. So I was committed to being obedient despite all of the pushbacks I was getting. Flash forward, I just had the celebratory picnic a week or so ago. I don't remember. I had it on a Sunday after church. And I am still in awe, you guys, in absolute awe of how faithful God is. I was absolutely in shock of, one, how many people came. I had way more people come than I ever could have imagined. I had the most incredible people there, people I look up to, I'm inspired by. The amount of motivation, encouragement I felt, and just how God's presence was so undeniably there. And it was a day of such joy, of such peace, of such community. I feel like that was one of the best days of my life, and one that I'm going to look back on for years and years and years and years. And being able to bring people together, because I think it's so important to invite people into when God is working in your lives. If you are trying to keep the good to yourself, then it can only go so far. But when you are bringing people into the goodness, you will be amazed at how God will use that obedience and how God will use that selflessness. There are so many examples all throughout the Bible where God actually commands us to celebrate and to have festivals. There are festivals that he had commanded people in the Old Testament to have for days. They weren't just a one-day thing. They would last for weeks even. And that was his design. He wanted his people to have a dedicated time to celebrate the victories and milestones that he had given them. Celebrating victories allows us to acknowledge God's faithfulness in our lives. Each accomplishment becomes a testimony to his goodness and provision. In Psalms 126, verse 3, it says, "He has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy." Reflecting on past victories strengthens our faith and reminds us of God's unwavering presence in both the triumphs and the trials of life. I want to pause real quick because this was a time I could create an altar to reflect on the triumphs God has given me, but it also was an altar to reflect on how he brought me through the trials, because this whole last year of my life was one of the most challenging ones. And not just this last year with the podcast, but honestly, the last 3 years of my life have been storm after storm after storm. And this picnic was an altar in form of a celebration to thank the Lord for his goodness through all the trials and for everything he had given me despite what was taken away. And really, it reminded me that all of these trials I've had, there have been loss attached to every single one. Loss of relationships, loss of trust, loss of community, loss of love, loss of light. There was just so much darkness at times. it was so much of a loss in different areas of my life and so much pruning. And to be in a place to celebrate and look at my life now and see all of the fruits and how they're different than that they were, how they're rooted in things that they weren't rooted in before. It had been a season of watering crops, and now seeing them start to sprout is beautiful. And it was such a joy and gift that I got to take a day to remember and to thank him. And I do feel like this form of a modern day altar is something I will be able to look back on, because it's not just a photo. It's not something that's in my camera roll that I have millions of others that look just like it. It's not a picture. It's not a note. It's not a text. It was something different than I normally do. And I think that's the importance. When you create your modern day altar, what that looks like to you, where you feel like God wants that to be. For me, like I said, it was a celebration, and a celebration felt right because I had never celebrated an accomplishment before in this way. And so it was different, meaning I knew it would stand out to me. And I know it's going to be something that will stick out in my mind and in my memory, for something I can look back on and remember his goodness and faithfulness, and something I can constantly give glory to, that the devil can't twist or try to tell me didn't happen in the ways that I thought it did. But a celebration was something that I think moving forward, I want to really implement for the important things where I see God move in my life. And I can thank him for that in a way that doesn't let me forget so easily, and in a way that stands out to me. I also find gratitude to be a form of worship by being thankful for the people, by being thankful for the time I had to celebrate. It was such a form of worship for the Lord, and just enjoying his goodness, enjoying the ways he's worked in each and every one of our lives that has listened, that has been a part of this. I find gratitude to be such a form of worship. And in Psalm 107, 8-9, it says, "Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind, for he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things." Gratitude cultivates a spirit of humility, recognizing that our achievements are not solely due to our own efforts, but are gifts from God. I just want to encourage you guys for the journey ahead that celebrating victories can serve as such a powerful form for the journey that is before you. And as we look back on past successes, we gain confidence in God's ability to see us through future challenges. The joy of the Lord is your strength, Nehemiah says. And sharing our victories with others not only glorifies God, but also inspires and encourages fellow believers in their journeys as well. In conclusion, celebrating accomplishments and victories is not only a joyful expression of gratitude, but also a powerful testament to God's faithfulness in our lives. By setting aside time to acknowledge and commemorate these milestones, we build a spiritual legacy of thankfulness and encouragement for ourselves and future generations, just like they did with the altars. Let us continually offer praise and thanksgiving for God's abundant blessings and victories, knowing that he who began a good work in us will carry it on to completion, as Philippians reminds us. I love you guys. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this encouraged you to step out in faith and to not look like the world looks and to feel selfish in the things you want to celebrate. Because when you are able to celebrate in a place of gratitude and worship, God can work tremendously through you. I hope this episode provided an expectancy of something that God can do differently in your life. And for me, the podcast celebration was such a marker for hope, because it set up the whole posture for everything to come. It set me in an expectancy of remembering God's faithfulness, remembering his goodness, celebrating that, and having this clear physical milestone to look back on and remember for every other trial that might come up, for every other bridge that we're going to be crossing together. And so I just want to encourage you that whatever it is in your life that you have right now, create an altar, build an altar, whatever that looks like, and continually do that. Not just today, but in the things God has answered your prayers in the things God has given you, in the ways He's worked in your life. Build those altars and look back on them for remembrance. I love you guys so much, and I cannot wait to talk to you next week. Have the best one.